Jonelle here. Today we're going to be going over the post-secondary exit pages 1 and 2. And, excuse me. So essentially the purpose of these post-secondary exit pages are to provide the student with a written report that contains information to consider as the student is actually transitioning from high school or their post-secondary special education program upon either receiving a high school diploma or a certificate of completion / recognition of achievement. So the post-secondary exit form should be used, or actually should be issued upon the completion of either their high school studies or their adult programming. These pages summarize individual students' abilities, their skills, needs, limitations, and much of this information can actually be found on the other pages of the IEP paperwork and from progress reports from the students' essentially their last year of school. The form actually provides recommendations to support successful transitions into adult living, learning, and working. And it should actually be designed to assist the student in establishing eligibility for reasonable accommodations and supports in their post-secondary program, whether it be the workplace or within the community, or even to be able to access any types of adult services as appropriate. And it should help the student actually better understand what their disability is and how it impacts them, and allows them to understand what their strengths are, as well as what supports they may need in order to be successful. All right, so what you'll notice here as these red areas are in a grayed out box, and this actually is auto-populated from the information, so it's not something that you can change, but you will change this date of the summary. And for the purpose of the video, we originally had started this IEP for Sarah Brown for the year 2020, and she was in 10th grade. So we are, in our minds, pretending that Sarah Brown is graduating, and the date that we're writing this would be June 14, 2023. So in actuality, you wouldn't be writing this ahead of time. It would be when the student is a senior or in their last year of their adult programming before they're leaving that you would create this. So we're just going to pretend, all right? As we scroll down, if the student is an English learner, list services provided to assist the student. So here you're really going to want to make sure that you're letting us know if the student is an English learner. And you want to make sure that their ELD needs are noted in here, which is perfect because you can actually refer back to your special factors page where you indicated what types of supports, accommodations, and implementations of strategies you guys were using for the student. Anything that's linguistically appropriate should also be included in this area as well. So I won't read over the examples because it does take a lot longer, but it is here for you guys to view, and feel free to pause the video so you can read it. All right. You also want to list, or not list, but you want to write in here who is actually completing this. And this is usually the case manager. So for you guys, if you were the case manager of the student, you would go ahead and write in your name. And on this page, essentially we are mandated to make sure that we keep in contact with students at least for 1 year after they leave high school. So part of that is actually getting contact information from them, from the student, in order to keep in contact with them. So social media accounts, cell phone, and or email address you want to gather from the student. I usually don't get many students who want to provide their social media accounts, but they are totally willing to give cell phone numbers and email addresses. But it's just something for us to touch base with them to see what are they doing a year after they leave, what were they able to access, were they working, are they going to school, kind of just collect that information and that data. So anything that we can keep in contact with them, you would list in here. And here you would actually mark in, so reason for exit, check one that applies. In this area, You actually want to make sure that you're marking whether or not the student has graduated per the district's policy. And don't worry about the CASE. We no longer provide the California High School Exit Exam. It's not a requirement for graduation anymore. So don't worry about that section. If the student's either reached age 22 and earned a certificate of achievement, or a certificate of completion is no longer eligible for special ed, or if they received a certificate of achievement / completion, and that could be if a student is actually maybe in a moderate STC class, and we know that they wouldn't benefit from the adult transition programs that we have, either YIP or YAP, and so they just want to leave high school and get their certificate of achievement or certificate of completion and just leave and not attend any secondary programs, and you would mark that box. But for Sarah, she's going to be leaving with a high school diploma. And you'll notice that the information as we start to scroll down is pretty identical to the present levels page. Okay, so strengths, interests, learning preferences. This information can be collected from your present levels page. Just make sure that you are updating it. So let's just say the student had their IEP in September. You wouldn't just copy and paste everything from there, because I'm sure that student had also made progress between September and when you're completing this, maybe around May or June. So it's information that you could have. Make sure that you guys are updating all of this information. Excuse me. The pre-academic, academic functional skills. This is where you're going to want to make sure that you're adding in information about the student. You can copy and paste some of this from that present levels page. If they had any recent standardized testing scores, what are their students' actual true strengths, abilities, interests, what are their needs in certain subjects or their skill areas. So make sure that this is plentiful information, because this is pretty much a snapshot that any program that the student either attends to work-wise or education-wise, once they leave, they'll be able to pretty much read this and get a good understanding of where the student is academically and within their functional skills. Cognitive abilities, again, most of the stuff that you're gathering from here is from the present levels. You may also want to gather some of this cognitive ability. This one would actually be from your info and eligibility page or connecting with your school psych. Okay. Communication skills, describe how the student is able to communicate. If the student receives speech and language services, please describe their current communication needs, deficits, and supports. If the student does not receive any speech and language services, then just go ahead and note the student's communication skills. Motor skills, any information about the student's motor development, if they are receiving OT, PT, APE. Also connect with those providers so you can add information into this area. Health, this is also from the present levels page. If you need to connect with the school nurse or the families for any updates in this area, but you could pretty much summarize any previous and current health history for the student. And if they do also have a health plan, you want to mark that in here so that their post-secondary program will also be able to take that information and use it as necessary. Social, emotional, and behavioral. This is where you're going to want to provide the student's social emotional well-being and indicate if there's any issues that may adversely impact the student's access to their education, indicate any behaviors or patterns of behaviors. And you can also collect this information from the special factors page as well. So the social emotional behavior will be both on present levels and the special factors page. But also make sure that you're updating it, because the information that's in there could not be as important to this time that you're writing it. Okay. Self-help and adaptive. Here you're going to want to make sure that you're providing information on the student's ability to attend classes. Are they tardy? Are they pretty much on time? Are they able to access things within the community? How well can they perform in areas of self-care and pretty much daily life skills? Feeding, bathing, dressing, occupation, and navigation. So are they able to navigate around the community or even amongst the school? Okay. Post-secondary goals. These goals that, as we scroll down, all this information following is going to be information that you're going to be gathering from the ITP pages 1 and 2. Okay. So here again, what are the students' post-secondary goals? How these can be obtained from, well, we put Sarah's transition plan, but essentially from your student's transition plan. What were the goals that they wanted? What did they want to do after they left school in regards to career, education, as well as independent living? All right. It leaves space for 4 goals, although the transition plan only does require 3. If the student has a 4th goal, feel free to add that in. For Sarah Brown, she only had 3, so we have NA in goal number 4. And we're looking here at, if employment is the primary goal, what are the students' top 3 job interests? So what do they want to do? For Sarah, she was very interested in electronics, so she's interested in working hands-on. And so we're looking at 3 different job interests that she would be maybe wanting to get while she's waiting for her career. But 3 different choices. So just because a student wants to be in the medical field doesn't mean that there aren't multiple opportunities for them. So maybe explore that with the students. And as we scroll a little further, we have recommendations to assist the student in meeting their post-secondary goals. So higher education or career technical education, what are the IEP team's recommendations in regards to these areas as related to their interests in post-secondary goals? These can also be found within the transition plan, but I don't think it is worded exactly like this, but just reading through your ITP, you'd be able to get information as to what are we going to do for the student in order for them to reach their educational goal, in order for them to reach their career goal, as well as their independent living. Okay. So all 3 of these are the same in terms of how to complete them, but again, you can read through the examples independently, because if I read through them, it would take quite a lot of time, as well as community participation. This is how are they able to access and use the community around them to help support themselves. All right. And agency linkages, this is if the student does have any contact or they are working with any agencies. You may want to mark it, who is the information, or maybe their case manager or somebody that they're touching base with at that center, as well as providing a contact number for them. All right. So there's Regional Center, CCS, Department of Health and Human Services, Mental Health Services, and there's also a space for other if they do. Some of the students may not be connected to any agencies, so don't worry about it. Then you don't have to check anything. For additional information, such as, however, but not limited to, last cognitive assessment results, which is the psychoeducational report, academic or functional assessments, IEP packet, or other K through 12 documentation, name of the school district, so we've left this here for you, Fremont Unified School District, the contact number for Fremont Unified, the title of contact person, so anything that has that's related to special education, we would just put special education or records clerk, and then we put 2 years after the date that this post-secondary plan was written. So you don't have to write your name here, but then if they want to gather any the student's file, then they can contact the special ed records clerk. All right. I will be going over post-secondary page 2 in this same video because it is not that long. So here we go. The post-secondary page 2, again, the same date that you're writing the summary. This area is grayed out, so don't worry about that because it is auto-populated. This page will actually provide the student's academic achievement and functional performance, pretty much the routine of their daily living while they're still in school. This information relates to meeting the student's post-secondary goals and may include reading, math, writing, or other academic areas. Okay, so what we're looking at is here you're going to want, this is one box, but you can add additional boxes if you just click on this green box. But for the purpose of the video, we only need one to show you how to complete it and to provide an example. So here you're going to want to list your students' supports that have helped them succeed in the past, including in this section you want to have their accommodations such as extended time, maybe access to printed material or reduced number of assignments, any type of assistive technology that they may have been using, instructional strategies that have been used in school to assist the student, and list any supports that your student is currently using that may be beneficial in the future. The information can be obtained from the service page under supplementary aids, services. So accommodations, modifications, and the supplementary aids and services, you could gather this information from. But essentially the post-secondary programs will look at this, and maybe the community college may not be able to give every accommodation that was provided in high school, but would be able to give information or give other supports that may be similar or comparable to what the student was receiving. All right, so if you can fill this out, it'll definitely help the student when they meet with whatever their post-secondary program would be. All right, thanks guys.